All about the angels. A truly beautiful book. It opens up a new and glorious world to its readers. It gives them a happiness and joy they never had before. It is a book for all priests and people, young and old, by Father Paul O'Sullivan, O.P. A letter from the Apostolic Nunciature to Father Paul O'Sullivan. Many thanks for sending me the beautiful little book on the angels which you have just published. It comes at a most opportune moment, for in the present state of unrest and suffering in the world, no better remedy can be found than the all-powerful protection of God's glorious angels. The doctrine of Holy Church on these blessed spirits is most consoling, and should be thoroughly understood by all Christians. The angels are our best friends, and you tell your readers all about them in a manner so clear and interesting that the perusal of your book will certainly awaken a great love for and confidence in these glorious princes of heaven. In return, the angels will obtain for us many graces, and deliver us from many evils. I remain with the highest esteem, yours very sincerely, Peter Siriazzi, Apostolic Nuncio. The Foreword. Why ignore our best friends? Make friends with the angels is the advice which the great Pope, St. Leo, gives every Christian, and it is an advice that everyone should follow. If we make friends with the angels, and nothing is easier, we shall receive innumerable and great favors which otherwise we shall never obtain. Our angel friends, too, will shield and protect us from countless dangers, evils, sickness, and accidents, which, without their help, we could not possibly avoid. In a word, these all-powerful and loving protectors will secure for us a degree of happiness that without their assistance we could not hope for in this vale of tears. Another reason why we should make friends with the angels is that they are our dearest and best friends. A good friend, that is, a friend who is able and always ready to help us, a friend to whom we can have recourse in all our troubles and sorrows, is one of the greatest blessings God can give us. Our human hearts thirst for love and sympathy. Among men, we rarely or never find such a friend, but this is not so with the angels. They are most desirous to be our friends, and they love us with all the intensity of their angelic natures. Since they are all-powerful and generous, we can have the fullest confidence in their help and friendship. The one friendship on this earth that gives us any idea of the love of the angels is the affection of a mother. This is the purest, the most generous, the strongest of all human loves. The mother loves her children with unbounded affection. God has placed in the mother's heart an instinct of love so great that it almost borders on the supernatural. She forgets herself and thinks only of her children. She works for them, sacrifices herself for them, and gives them her all. If one of them should fall sick or be plunged in some great sorrow, to that one she devotes a more especial gentleness and more loving care. We sometimes see a frail woman watch by the bedside of her sick child, eating little, resting little, consumed with the poignant anxiety for 10, 20, even 30 days, never complaining, never faltering. When these days of anguish and bitterness are past, this almost superhuman effort, these long, weary vigils seem to have cost her nothing. The mother's love sustained her. Yet strong men who lose their sleep for 2 or 3 consecutive nights complain that they find it hard to work the following day. If a poor, frail mother, she may be young or old, rich or poor, full of weaknesses and imperfections, can rise to such a height of love and abnegation as this, what may we not expect from God's angels, who have no defects, no imperfections, and who love us with all the mighty power of their glorious angelic natures? The teaching of the Church about the angels is most beautiful and consoling, but unfortunately many Christians have scant knowledge of the great angel world. They know little about these blessed spirits, love them little, and seldom pray to them. Worst of all, they do not realize their presence. They show no confidence in them, and they do not call on them for help when dangers and difficulties press around. As a result, they forfeit 1,000 blessings that they might easily enjoy, and fall victims to 1,000 accidents that they might have easily avoided. How comes it that the angels are so little known and loved? Simply because many whose duty it is to teach this most important doctrine are gravely negligent in fulfilling their obligation. First of all, Christian mothers should instill deeply into the minds of their children a clear, vivid, and abiding sense of the presence of their dear angels. It is not sufficient to give them vague, hazy, insufficient notions of these blessed spirits, nor is it enough to teach them to say a short prayer at morning and at night to their angel guardians. They should devote much time and much attention to this all-important subject. Children must be taught constantly, from their tenderest years, to have a real love and friendship for their angels, to have boundless confidence in them. They must be accustomed to feel and realize the personal presence of their angels, to call on them in all their fears and troubles. How much better this would be than that the children should have their heads filled with foolish fear of ghosts and hobgoblins, as so frequently happens. Mothers who impress on their children this great lesson confer on them inestimable blessings during all the long years of their lives. On the other hand, if they neglect this duty or make light of it, they do a great wrong to their dear ones, for they deprive them of the best and the most powerful friends. Catechists, too, and teachers of the young in schools, colleges, and convents are frequently remiss in teaching those in their charge all about the blessed angels. The minds of their pupils are developing, and the teaching of the mothers in the home, no matter how good it might have been, must be perfected and developed. Professors of older students, boys and girls, are perhaps the greater offenders. They rarely mention the subject of the angels in their classes. Why? Do not the angels exist? Are they not our best friends? Is there not much to be said about them? Priests, of course, can do much to remedy the neglect of parents and teachers by preaching at times on the angels, by wise counsels in the confessional, and by exhorting the faithful to read books on the angels. Priests who do so receive most striking graces. The object of this book. There are few books published about the angels, and these few are mostly doctrinal and abstruse. They do not appeal to the general public, and fail to create in the heart of the ordinary reader that love and trust they should have in the angels. It is so different in the case of the saints. There are innumerable books attractively written about these great servants of God, which help us to know them, to love them, and to follow their example. There are also pictures of all kinds, large and small, of the saints, which we hang on our walls, place on our work table, or use in our prayer books. We thus live, as it were, in the presence and company of the saints. Pictures of the angels are few, and to a certain extent misleading, because the angel is, as a rule, represented as guiding little children, whereas adults should, with equal reason, be reminded of their angels and have suitable pictures of them. In the sacred scriptures, angels are pictured as helping Abraham and Jacob, Elias and Daniel, Hagar and Judith, Peter and Paul, all adults. The object of these pages is to awaken in the hearts of our readers a real love and friendship for the holy angels, and abiding confidence in them, above all, to make them realize and feel vividly the presence of these loving spirits ever by their sides. Our plan? At the cost of inverting the natural order of our book, we will commence by relating some of the modern and best authenticated apparitions of angels. We do this, first of all, to stimulate the interest of our readers, and secondly, because many seem to think that angelic apparitions are a thing of the past. We shall then, following the doctrine of St. Thomas, tell our readers all about the angels, who they are, what they're doing, where they are, how beautiful, how lovable, how powerful, how eager they are to help us, and what great advantages we gain by honoring and loving these great princes of heaven. Next, we will recall some of the beautiful stories of the angels which we find in the sacred scriptures, in the lives of the martyrs and other saints. In the course of our book, we quote striking and well-authenticated incidents from the lives of men and women, boys and girls, living in the world like ourselves. These facts have a special value, as they go to show how ready the dear angels are to help not only saints, but all who love them, no matter how modest these may be. We humbly ask the dear angels to help us in this work of love. Chapter 1. The Apparitions of the Angel Guardian of Portugal in the year 1916. We cannot begin our little book on the angels better than by giving an accurate and authoritative account of the apparitions of the guardian angel of Portugal in Fatima. These are perhaps the most striking and best authenticated angelic apparitions of modern times. Portugal has received many and great blessing during the long years of her history. To mention a few, she was for many centuries one of the greatest Catholic nations in the world, we might perhaps say the greatest. She discovered and conquered half the present known world in less than 100 years, which was certainly a wonderful feat. But she did more. She Christianized her vast empire with a care and humanity that has never been surpassed. The best authorities bear witness to this fact, and the Church has fully recognized it by granting many notable privileges to the Catholics of Portugal, privileges which they still continue to enjoy. A second great favor was the extraordinary devotion of the Blessed Sacrament, which gives her a claim to the glorious title of the Land of the Eucharist. A third outstanding grace bestowed on this favored country was the exceptional love and devotion to Our Blessed Lady, which began with the first king of Portugal and was continued by his successors, who held themselves bound to insist on and maintain the solemn consecration of the realm to Mary Immaculate, whom they chose for their patroness and protectress. Later on, kings offered the royal crown to Mary, so that for long years the kings of Portugal never wore the royal diadem. The crowning grace, however, was reserved for our own days, when in May 1917, and the following 5 months, God's Holy Mother appeared in Fatima, establishing there one of the most glorious Marian sanctuaries in the world. An outstanding feature of these apparitions, and one that none other of her sanctuaries can claim, is the appearance of the angel guardian of Portugal in 1916, the year preceding the apparitions. The glorious archangel appeared on 3 occasions and in 3 different places to the privileged children who were destined to see Our Lady. He taught them how to pray and sanctify themselves, assuring them that Jesus and Mary had special designs for them, thus preparing them for the coming of God's Holy Mother the following year, 1917. The following is an exact account of these angelic apparitions. The first vision of the angel. The eldest of the 3 children to whom Our Lady appeared, now known as Sister Lucy, tells us in her own simple language how the angel of Portugal appeared to her and her cousins, Jacinta and Francis, 3 times. She did not remember the exact date of these apparitions, for she says, "At that time I made no account of months or weeks or days." She was an uncultured little peasant girl. It was sometime in the spring of 1916 that Jacinta, Francis, and I were minding our sheep in a place called Chosavela. It was in the morning, and a light rain like dew began to fall as we went up the side of the hill with our sheep, looking for a rock someplace where we could shelter ourselves from the rain. In the midst of an olive grove we found a cave which we entered for the first time. When the rain had cleared off, we still lingered there some time, ate our lunch, and said our rosary. After this we began to play with some stones. Suddenly, though the day was very mild, a strong wind began to sway the branches of the tree, and we glanced up to see the cause of it. We saw over the trees a light as white as snow, and in the midst of it the form of a young man, as brilliant as crystal when it is lit up by the light of the sun. As he approached us, we began to see his features clearly. We were surprised, absorbed by what we saw, but said not a word. On coming near us, he said, "Don't be afraid. I am the angel of peace. Pray with me." Then, kneeling on the ground, he bent his head low, and we, moved by a supernatural inspiration, imitated him and repeated the words that we heard him say. "My God, I believe, I adore, I hope in you, and I love you. I ask you to pardon those who do not believe, adore, hope in, and love you." After saying these words 3 times, he arose and said to us, "Pray thus. The hearts of Jesus and Mary are listening to the voice of your supplications." He then disappeared. The supernatural feeling that had taken possession of us was so intense that we did not even think of our own existence. We remained for a long time as the angel had left us, repeating over and over the same prayer. We felt the presence of God so overpowering and so intimate in our souls that we did not even dare to speak of it among ourselves. Next day, we still felt the same intense feeling of God's presence, which only after the lapse of some time began to lessen. We did not think of speaking of the apparition, nor did we make any agreement to keep it secret. The apparition itself seemed to impose silence on us. We did not say a word about it. Perhaps it made more impression on us as it was the first apparition which we had had. The second vision of the angel was in the heat of summer. We went to pass the hour of the great heat of the day in the shade of some trees, in a place called Arniro. Suddenly we saw the same angel near us. He said, "What are you doing? Pray, pray much. The hearts of Jesus and Mary have special designs of mercy on you. Offer constantly to the Most High prayers and sacrifices." "What sacrifices?" I asked. "Offer a sacrifice of everything you can in reparation for the sins which offend him, and in supplication for the conversion of sinners. Obtain for our country peace. I am the guardian angel of Portugal. Above all, accept and bear with resignation the sufferings our Lord will send you." These words of the angel engraved themselves on our hearts like a light, which made us see who God was, how he loved us, and how he wished us to love him. It made us understand the value of sacrifice, how pleasing it is to God, and how he converts sinners by means of it. Therefore, from that moment, we began to offer to God everything that mortified us or caused us pain, without seeking to do other penances, except indeed to repeat for hours, prostrate on the earth, the prayer the angel had taught us. The third vision was at the end of October or beginning of November, for as I've said, I did not in those days make account of days or weeks. This third vision took place in an olive grove belonging to my parents, called Pregira. We had said our rosary and the prayer that the angel had taught us in the first vision. He now appeared to us with a chalice in his hand, and over it a host, from which drops of blood fell into the chalice. Leaving the chalice and the host suspended in the air, he prostrated himself on the earth and repeated the following prayer 3 times. "Most Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, I adore you profoundly, and offer you the most precious body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ, present in all the tabernacles of the world, in reparation for all the outrages, sacrileges, and indifference with which he is offended. And by the infinite merits of his most sacred heart and the Immaculate Heart of Mary, ask you for the conversion of poor sinners." He then arose and again took the chalice. To me he gave the host, and to Jacinta and Francis he gave what was in the chalice, saying, "Take and drink the body and blood of Jesus Christ, horribly outraged by ungrateful men. Make reparation for their crimes and console our God." Once more he prostrated himself on the earth and repeated 3 times the same prayer, Most Holy Trinity, and then disappeared. Overcome by supernatural emotion, we imitated the angel and did all that he had done. The feeling of the divine presence overcame us. and as it were annihilated us completely. It seemed to deprive us of the use of our corporal senses for a long time. During these days, we performed our material actions as if impelled by this supernatural force. The peace and happiness which we enjoyed were great and intimate. Our souls were completely wrapped up in God. The physical weakness we felt was also great. The apparitions of our Blessed Lady, later on, produced different effects on us. We enjoyed the same intimate joy, peace, and happiness, but instead of physical prostration, we felt a certain energy. Instead of annihilation in the presence of God, we felt exaltation and joy. Instead of any difficulty in speaking, we felt an enthusiasm in communicating what we had seen and heard, though indeed we felt a strong inspiration to keep some things secret. Our space does not allow of our entering more fully into the story of the beautiful lives of these dear little peasant children of Fatima, so highly honored by God's Holy Mother. We merely wish to accentuate one fact, and that is the amazing results produced in them by the angels' visits. No master of the spiritual life could instill into our minds such lofty ideals, such heroic courage, such unbounded generosity in doing God's will. Let this be a lesson to us, for if we are devout to our own dear angel guardian, he too will most certainly raise us up to a great height of sanctity, and obtain for us the very greatest graces. Why did the angel appear in Portugal? Although every country, every kingdom, and every province has its angel guardian, we know of no other nation in modern times whose angel has appeared as in Portugal. Can we offer any explanation for this exceptional honor? Perhaps the answer lies in the fact that Portugal has had from the earliest times a very special love for the angels, as the following facts go to show. Her first king, D. Alfonso Enrique, a man eminent not only for his military prowess, but also for his truly Christian life, had a very marked love for the angels, notably for his angel guardian and for St. Michael, the prince of the heavenly host. We find this devotion mentioned in some of the old Portuguese chronicles. The account runs as follows. Some time after the king had taken the almost impregnable Moorish fortress of Santarem, the Moorish hosts, under the command of their monarch, Albarc, in person, made a formidable attack on the city, in the hope of reconquering it. At the time, Alfonso Enrique was suffering grievously from a wound in one of his legs, so that he could not mount his horse. He insisted, however, on getting into a chariot and joining in the fight. It was a hazardous adventure because his death or capture would have been a serious blow to his soldiers and a source of encouragement to his enemies. However, as events proved, he was under angelic protection. A legend says he saw an arm grasping a sword, and also a wing, which showed him that an angel was with him. This sword protected the person of the king and wrought dreadful havoc among the Moors, who fled in terror, leaving the Portuguese master of the field. The Moorish captives, taken in the battle, declared that they too had seen the angel. In gratitude, the king founded a military order which he called the Order of the Wings, in honor of St. Michael and the angels. Many noble families belong to this order, and we've seen an image of a wing and arm brandishing a sword on the coat of arms of one of the old families. We have further evidence of this devotion in the fact that Don Manuel I, one of the most remarkable of the kings of Portugal, was also most devout to the angels, so much so that he begged the Pope to sanction the feast of the angel guardian of Portugal and permit the office and the Mass to be said on the third Sunday of July. This feast is still celebrated. We have never heard that any other country celebrates a like feast. Vasco de Gama, the renowned discoverer, who found the maritime route to India, leaves another proof of the great confidence that the Portuguese had in the holy angels. When starting on this memorable voyage to India, one of the most remarkable recorded in history, he called two of his ships after the angels. One, St. Gabriel, because it was he who had brought to the world the great tidings of our redemption, and the admiral too had the wish to carry the same news of salvation to the pagan lands he hoped to discover. He called the other ship St. Raphael, after the angel who accompanied the young Tobias on his long and dangerous journey. The admiral rightly thought that he himself could have no better guide and protector in this perilous voyage than this patron of travelers. In modern times, the Portuguese, recalling this act of Vasco de Gama, have again named two of their vessels after the archangels. The king, Cardinal de Enrique, cherished a marked love for the angels and built a church in their honor in Lisbon. The feast day was kept as a holiday of obligation in the parish. A second church was erected in honor of St. Michael, and this feast was also observed as a holiday of obligation. In other churches of Lisbon and throughout the country, we find still further traces of this same devotion. Many of the kings of Portugal and also the royal princes took the names of Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael in baptism. In some families, the name of one of the angels is given as a second name to all the children. In one of such families, known to the writer, there was John Raphael, Mary Raphael, Thomas Raphael, James Raphael, and Anne Raphael. Luís de Sousa, O.P., one of the foremost Portuguese writers, gives us the story of the conversion of the celebrated Fray Gil, or Egidius of Santarém, by his angel guardian. Egidius was a man of noble birth and of a devout Christian family. He himself, unfortunately, took to the study of the black arts, and went to Paris in order to facilitate this study. On his way, he was induced to sell his soul to the devil in exchange for great learning. This he did by a written bond. One night when working in his laboratory, a young man mounted on a horse dashed into the chamber and, sternly rebuking him, ordered him to desist at once from his diabolical practices. Egidius was terrified and at once obeyed. Some time after, he was again tempted by the devil, who persuaded him that this vision was merely the effect of an overheated imagination, and he resumed his studies. The horseman once more appeared, and standing over him struck him with his lance, leaving a mark on his chest, and in a voice of anger, such as he had never heard before, commanded him to renounce these hellish arts at once and forever. Egidius, moved by this second apparition to the very depths of his soul, not only abandoned his evil ways, but did salutary penance. He returned to Portugal, where he joined the Dominican order, in which he attained a great sanctity. The same chronicler cites another example of angelic visitation. One of the fathers, eminent for holiness, by name Father Lawrence, was accosted one day when making a journey on foot by an angel who presented him with a box of relics, which he had brought from a distant town recently taken by the Saracens, and which he wished to save from desecration. These relics were for many centuries venerated in the church of Guimarães in the north of Portugal. These few incidents go to show how deeply ingrained was the love and devotion to the holy angels in Portugal. They furnish us with a possible reason why the guardian angel of the country appeared in Fatima, for the angels generously repay all the honor we show them. Angelic apparitions in Hungary and in Ireland. As we've already observed, we know of no other country except Portugal where the angel guardian of the country has appeared in recent times. But the angels have appeared in remoter epochs in Hungary and in Ireland, both of which countries have also been very devout to the angels. Olibrio, king of Hungary. This king was deliberating on making war on the Tartars, trusting to a powerful army which he had at his disposal. A holy bishop counseled him to pray fervently before deciding on hostilities. In answer to his sincere prayer, the angel guardian of the kingdom appeared and warned him not to declare the war he had meditated on making, for, said the angel, "Your cause is not just, and you will be surely defeated. Do not trust in your army, for the angel guardian of the Tartars will fight against you, and you will be beaten, and I cannot help you in what is not just." The king very readily followed this advice, and made peace with the Tartars, who gladly accepted his overtures, for in this his angel helped him. In deep gratitude, the monarch celebrated magnificent festivities in honor of the angel guardian of the kingdom, and placed an image of the angel over his crown. Thenceforward, it became the custom of the kings of Hungary to ask God's help in all matters of moment through the intercession of the angel guardian of the kingdom. The King of Ireland and the Angel. The Venerable Bede mentions that one of the kings of Ireland had great devotion to the holy angels, and invoked them frequently with the greatest confidence. Unfortunately, owing to the bad advice of a false counselor, he became unpopular with his subjects, who determined to revolt against him. On learning this, the king was seriously disturbed and entertained grave fears for his life and kingdom. However, his angel guardian appeared to him radiant with joy and bade him not to fear, for he said, "Owing to your great love for me and the other angels, we have obtained from God that your princes and subjects will remain loyal and faithful to you. But do you, on your part, dismiss your false counselor, and seek in all things to please our people." The king gratefully did what the angel had counseled him, with the happiest results. These two incidents teach us how our angels, though they love us dearly, will not help us if we seek to do wrong. On the other hand, they are eager to give us every possible assistance when we seek for what is just. We should beware of speaking ill or doing harm to others, for their angels will defend them and avenge them. Our Lord seems to call our attention to this fact when he warns us not to harm or scandalize children, for he says, "Their angels see the face of my Father." St. Columba and the Angels. St. Columba, abbot of Iona, was one of the greatest of the Irish saints. He cherished a great love for the angels who constantly visited him. Before his birth, an angel told his mother that she would bring forth a son who would take numberless souls to heaven, and who would be reckoned among the prophets. He was once falsely accused of a crime he had never committed. He boldly went to the synod convoked to condemn and punish him. When the great St. Brendan, who was present, saw him approach, he went to meet him, showing him every sign of reverence. The other members of the synod were surprised. He replied, "I saw a brilliant pillar of fire precede this man, whom you have unjustly excommunicated, and I've seen angels walking by his side." When living in the Isle of Hinba, an angel came 3 successive times to bid him consecrate E.D.M king. He saw the soul of Brito, the monk, then the soul of a holy man called Diarmaid, and later on the soul of St. Brendan borne up to heaven by angels. The demons, furious at the good he did, attacked him fiercely, but he expelled them from the island. When praying in his cell, he suddenly called out, "Help, help," for he had seen a monk fall from a high tower. The angel seized the falling monk before he reached the ground, and so saved his life. He sought out lonely places in the woods to pray, where bands of angels surrounded him. When he died, his soul mounted to heaven with innumerable angels. Chapter 2 of the book All About the Angels by Father Paul O'Sullivan. We shall now mention briefly some other angelic apparitions made to eminent servants of God in our own days. Our information is culled from various reliable sources. St. Gemma Galgani. This dear little saint was born in 1878, died in 1903, and was canonized in 1940. She was favored not at one time or other, but we might say constantly, by the visible presence of her angel guardian, whose radiant beauty and sweet goodness filled her with delight. She conversed lovingly with him, while he, on his part, gave her daily proofs of tender love and friendship. He was with her everywhere, at prayer, at work, in her room, when performing household duties, and even in the streets. This constant presence of her angel, and his intimate communication with her, were no illusion. Her confessor, who was an experienced master, of the spiritual life, used all the means counseled by the Church to make sure of the genuineness of these visions and apparitions. Her interviews with the dear angel were of a simple and familiar nature. She chatted with him, gazed on his face, asked him many questions, to which he replied with ineffable love and affection. He took messages from her to our Lord, to the Blessed Virgin, and the saints, and brought her back their answers. Moreover, this glorious angel took the tenderest care of his protégé. He taught her how to pray and meditate, especially on the passion and sufferings of our Lord. He gave her admirable counsels and lovingly reproved her when she committed any little faults. Under his guidance, Gemma speedily reached a high degree of perfection. Once, when a wicked man uttered a horrible blasphemy in her hearing, the little saint was so horrified that she would have fallen to the ground had not the angel grasped her by the hand and consoled her by a few loving words. On another occasion, when she had delayed over long at her devotions in the church, he accompanied her home. When sick and suffering, as she frequently was, her angel ever watched by her side with unceasing care, so that she said to one of her friends, "How could I have ever borne those awful pains, had it not been for the presence of my angel?" These are some of the countless beautiful incidents which her biographers relate at great length, and with many interesting details, regarding the delightfully familiar intercourse which existed for many years between this pious maiden and her angel guardian. This dear child was not only privileged to see and speak with her angel, but our dear Lord and his blessed mother appeared to her also, and treated her with the gentlest love and affection. In order to merit these wonderful privileges, her angel sought to make her humble, pure, and full of divine love. We may not aspire, perhaps, to such visible communications with our own angel guardian, but yet Gemma Galgani teaches us a lesson of the very highest importance, that we have an angel, as really and truly present with us as she had, though we do not see him. This dear angel loves us just as her angel loved her, with an immense love, and is as able and as ready to help us as her angel helped her. We would do well to ask this little saint to obtain for us the grace to feel and realize that our angel is with us. It does not matter whether we see him or not. The great thing is to know and feel that he is certainly with us and never leaves us. For further information, you may read what the saint's confessor has written about her. St. John Bosco. Was it an angel, or was it a dog? The life of Don Bosco furnishes us with a remarkable and interesting story of what appears to many as angelic intervention in saving the life of the servant of God from the fierce attacks of the Waldenesian heretics, who made several attempts to assassinate him. These heretics were furious at the good done by Don Bosco, and sought by violent means to rid themselves of his influence. Some of their adherents were men of the lowest and most vicious type, and these they hired to carry out their nefarious designs. When returning home one night, through a bad and dangerous part of the town, he saw a magnificent dog of huge size following him. At first he was frightened, but quickly came to see that the dog was friendly. The animal walked by his side and accompanied him to the door of his house, and then went away. This happened 5, 6, or 8 times. He called the dog Grigio. What did it mean? He was soon to learn. Hastening home by himself, some time after the first appearance of the dog, 2 shots were fired at him by an assassin from behind a tree. Both shots missed their mark, but his assailant then rushed at and grappled with him. At that moment, Grigio appeared and sunk his teeth into the flesh of the would-be murderer, who fled away shrieking with pain. On a second occasion, 2 men lay in wait for him and threw a sack over his head. This time it seemed all was over with him, but Grigio unexpectedly came to his rescue and jumped at one of the ruffians, seizing him by the throat. The other fled in terror. Don Bosco had then to liberate the first from the fangs of Grigio, who still held him by the throat. A third time, no less than 12 hired assassins, armed with clubs, lay in ambush, into which Don Bosco walked unaware. Again, escape seemed impossible, but once more Grigio bounded into the midst of the group, and his fierce look and his savage growl proved enough. The men made off as quickly as they could. Sometimes the dog entered Don Bosco's house, but always with some reason, either to accompany him on a night journey or to prevent his leaving the house. No amount of animal instinct could explain these unexpected appearances of the dog. On one of these occasions, when Don Bosco tried to go out, the great dog lay across the door and growled in such a menacing way that St. John was forced to remain at home. And it was well that he did, for shortly after a gentleman arrived to warn him not to leave the house on any consideration, as the heretics lay in wait to kill him. As long as the persecution lasted, Grigio never failed to be at his post, and when the danger passed he was seen no more. Whence he came or whither he went, no one knew. 10 years after Don Bosco had to go to a farmhouse of some friends, and had been advised that the road was dangerous. "If only I had Grigio," he said. At once the great dog appeared by his side as if he had heard his words, giving signs of the greatest joy. Both man and dog arrived safely at the farmhouse and went into the dining room where the family invited Don Bosco to take part in the evening meal. The dog lay down. No one thought any more of him. When the repast was finished, the master of the house proposed to feed the dog, but he was gone. Doors and windows had been closed. How did he go? In 1883, that was more than 30 years after the dog's first appearance, he appeared once more in a different locality to guide Don Bosco, who had lost his way. How explain those wonderful appearances of the dog at the most opportune moments and in different localities? Surely we may believe that this was angelic intervention. Pierre Lamy, born 1853, died 1931. Pierre Lamy was of our own days. He was indeed a most beautiful and lovable character, raised by God to a great height of sanctity, and favored by the most extraordinary graces. He reminds one strikingly of the curé of Ars, so simple, so humble, and yet so powerful in work, so enlightened by the Holy Spirit. The facts we quote here are guaranteed by competent authorities, who, when writing or speaking of him, give the facts as far as possible in Pierre Lamy's own words. Although the recipient of many wonderful graces and privileges, we confine ourselves here to an account of his intimacy with the angels. The blessed spirits are attracted to us particularly by the virtues of purity, humility, sobriety, and love, all which virtues shone brightly in the life of Pierre Lamy. The highest authorities, such as Cardinal Amati, bore witness to the good Father's amazing sanctity. His Eminence did not hesitate to say of him, "In my diocese, I have a second curé of Ars." Some of his friends actually heard the angels speaking to him. The following is a fact given us by his personal and very intimate friend, Count Vivier. On November 19th, 1924, at 10:15, I was in bed in Father Lamy's house. I had put out my light. 2 or 3 minutes had passed, when through the 2 doors, which are rather thin, I heard an animated conversation going on in the priest's room. There were 3 voices taking part in it, and in the silence of the night they could be distinguished clearly and distinctly. I was at once intensely interested in this phenomenon, the importance of which I grasped immediately. Despite the cold, I sat up in order to hear better. Nobody had come upstairs since I had entered my bedroom. The stairs are so light, and the house so far from being soundproof, that from my room I could have heard the slightest movements. Only 20 minutes earlier, when I left the priest at the door of his room, I had seen that there was no other occupant. From time to time, Pierre Lamy spoke definitely and affirmatively. I could distinguish a little here and there, but did not understand all the words and meaning of what was said. Discretion forbade me to get out of bed and listen at the door. On the following morning, at 5:45, I rejoined Pierre Lamy as he was going downstairs. On the way to the church, I put the question to him. Father, after bidding me good night last evening, you were talking. I heard other voices, too. Were they angels? He smiled and answered, Perhaps. They are the evening's consolation. In answer to further questions which I put to him during that day, my host told me that the voices I heard were those of St. Gabriel and his guardian angel. He said, We do not give the angels the importance they deserve. We do not pray to them enough. The angels are very much touched when we pray to them. It is very useful to pray to the angels. We do not pray enough to our guardian angels. What do we do for them? We give them just a bit of prayer at the end of our night prayers, that's all. Their mercy in our regard is very great, and often we do not make sufficient use of them. They regard us as brothers in need, and they are very good to us. There is nobody so faithful as an angel. What a memory he has! He remembers everything. He can tell you what you did 10 years ago as if it were only yesterday. What a number of friends we have whom we do not know. We are very little in comparison with them. Thus he chatted very simply about the angels. Our guardian angels often save us from accidents. But what can they do for us when we're not in the state of grace? They would like to help us, but they cannot. When we refuse homage to our Lord, we send his servants away. And how many of us Christians ever ask for their aid and their protection? A little prayer, Good night, my good angel, and that's all. We do not have recourse enough to the angels. They are with us, and we leave them alone. We don't trouble them as much as we ought to. Their garments are white, but with an unearthly whiteness. I cannot describe it, because it cannot be compared to earthly whiteness. It is much softer to the eye. These bright angels are enveloped in a light so different from ours that in comparison everything seems dark. When you see a band of 50, you're lost in amazement. They seem clothed with golden plates, constantly moving, and are like so many suns. It must be a wonderful sight in heaven to see millions of angels. I've often been supported by angels when I was tired and exhausted, and carried from one place to another without knowing it. I would merely say, God, I am tired. Often at night I would be far away from home, and I would find myself suddenly transported almost to my door. I used to go to the railway station during the war and give general absolution to the soldiers. It was in the evening at the station. There were about 200 soldiers lying on stretchers or planks and even on the ground. Cars were coming from Paris to pick them up. When I arrived, I always asked my guardian angel to cure some of them. I saw the angel and the archangel blessing them, and I passed on. The archangel St. Gabriel was with me, and so was my guardian angel. While he was there, I could see quite clearly. He illuminated men's consciences so that you could see. Cardinal Lametti had said to me, I grant you full faculties, my dear father. I know that you will not do anything wrong. In the midst of so much sorrow and distress, I had the consolation of seeing that the archangel was very merciful to the soldiers. The angel saved me from being stung by bees in the chapel. It was last summer. As I could not see very well, I should have suffered tortures. They forbade the bees to sting me. These are a few of the many facts which were crowded into the life of this dear old priest. It is for us to bear clearly in mind what he tells us, namely, that we do not give anything like the love and trust we ought to give to our own dear angel and to the angels in general. Count Vivier's life of Pierre Lamy, though very simple in style, is interesting and instructive. A translation in English may be had from Burns and Oates and Washburn. Now the story of Tundale. Tundale was an Irish knight, a brave man, a good soldier, but unfortunately he led a bad life. The following story of his conversion made such an impression that it was translated into German, French, Italian, English, Norman, Norse, and Irish. It was written by an Irish monk about the year 1149. Once when sitting at table, Tundale became unconscious, and would have been buried had not his body retained some little warmth. He remained in this unconscious state from Wednesday to Saturday. On regaining consciousness, he was completely changed, gave thanks to God, and did severe penance for his bad life. He told his friends that his soul seemed to have left his body, and he found himself surrounded by demons who strove to take him to hell, but his angel guardian appeared and drove them away. Tyndale told the angel how grievously he suffered, and the angel in reply said, "I have always been by your side, but you never asked me to help you." He promised Tyndale that he should receive mercy, but would suffer for some time. Then, led by the angel, he passed through hell, purgatory, and heaven, suffering at first, but then comforted. He saw people whom he had known on earth. He saw St. Patrick and other Irish saints in heaven, and he saw 2 Irish kings in purgatory. These facts made a deep impression on all who heard them, and were translated, as we said above, into many languages. Chapter 3. All about the angels. Who are the angels? The angels are pure spirits, the mighty princes of heaven, who stand before God, gazing on his unveiled presence, burning fires of love, filled to overflowing with the plenitude of happiness. The angels are the perfect images of God, mirrors of his divine perfections, reflecting his love, his beauty, his holiness, his power, all his divine attributes and perfections, but each angel in his own special way. No 2 angels are alike, no 2 are equal. God's perfections are infinite, and countless millions of angels reflect these perfections in a divinely marvelous way. No 2 men, no 2 women are identically alike, but the difference between them is relatively slight, whereas the difference between 2 angels is vast, complete. Every angel is specifically different from the other, as one species differs from another. All the millions of men and women who people the world, all those who have ever lived or ever will live, are of one and the same species, but each angel is a species all in himself. The angels are unspeakably lovely. They have no shadow of imperfection, no defects. Nothing on this earth can possibly give us an idea of their resplendent glory. No painter, no poet, no artist ever conceived anything like them. They are living replicas of God's beauty. Fra Angelico's pictures of the angels excel those of any other artist, so that Michelangelo exclaimed on seeing them, "Angelico must have seen these angels in heaven, otherwise he could never have painted them as he's done." But even Angelico's pictures do not give us the faintest idea of the real angels. St. Bridget, who was favored by God with heavenly visions, tells us that were we to see an angel in all his beauty, we should be so ravished with delight at the sight of him that we should die of love. St. Francis of Rome was favored by the constant vision of her angel. She says that were an angel to appear in all his splendor, the light of the sun and the moon and the stars would become dim in comparison. After our Lord's resurrection, we read how an angel descended from heaven and rolled back the stone that had closed the Holy Sepulchre. The sacred scriptures say that the countenance of the angel was like lightning, and his raiment white as snow. His appearance was so full of majesty that the soldiers whom Christ's enemy had placed to guard the tomb were terrified, and dared not look on him, but fell to the ground as if dead. When therefore the angels appear to men, they take a human form, so as not to overawe or confound those who look on them. What must not be the ravishing beauty of the heavenly Jerusalem, where these countless millions of glorious angels are not only resplendently beautiful, but all differ from each other, so that the perfections of one are completely different from those of the other. The angels reflect God's goodness and sweetness no less wonderfully. They reflect all his divine virtues and perfections. They enjoy the vision of God's infinite love and love him back with all the mighty strength and intensity of their natures. Their happiness is perfect, for they receive the ocean of God's happiness in a way that no human mind can fathom. The happiness that an angel enjoys in one moment is so deep complete and all-satisfying, that it exceeds all the happiness that a mortal man could enjoy in 1,000 years. The generosity of the angels. What is of paramount importance to us is that the holy angels seek in every possible way to share with us this immense ocean of love and happiness which they themselves enjoy. Their generosity knows no bounds. This is a truth that we must do our best to understand fully and clearly. Were a very rich man to say to us, "Ask me for everything you wish, and I will most readily give it to you," how happy we should be! Certainly, we would not hesitate to ask for all we need. This is exactly what the angels say to us. Ask us, and we will give you a share of all our treasures, all our graces, all our happiness, and we will give you some of all we have. Their goodness and generosity are immense. Unfortunately, so far from corresponding with their efforts for our welfare, we constantly impede them by our sins and imperfections. If only we knew them better and loved them more, and were more docile to their constant whisperings, our happiness would be unspeakably great. What are the angels doing? Millions and millions of angels fill the heavens, ministering unto God. But millions and millions of angels are also here on earth, ministering unto us. They are in our midst, around us, about us, everywhere. Their activity, in our regard, is unceasing every day and every moment of the day, though we do not see them or even suspect their presence, nor feel their influence. They are watching over us with infinite care and love. Were it not for their ever-vigilant protection, the history of the world would be far different, far more calamitous than it has been. The life, too, of each of us, had we not a mighty angel guarding us, would be sad in the extreme. What the life of a little child would be if abandoned, forsaken, without mother, father, or friend, such would be in great part our lot, had not God in his mercy given us our holy angel. These angels are helping us at every instant, doing us countless favors, and saving us from dangers and evils of every kind. God has given us into their charge, for he has given his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. In their hands they shall bear thee up, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Angelic Intelligence. The angels, like God, have two great faculties, the intellect and the will. The intellect of the angel is incomparably superior to the human intellect. The angels are not only perfect in beauty, mighty in strength, but they are full of knowledge and wisdom. Their manner of understanding is likewise completely different from ours. The human mind has to plod from truth to truth, just as the human body moves step by step, whereas the angelic intelligence grasps the whole of a subject at a single glance. Seeing a principle, it sees at once all its consequences. Seeing a truth, it sees it at the same time all its possible aspects. The most notable savants of this earth have amassed the knowledge of a limited number of subjects with infinite labor and long years of study. Nor may they claim the credit for all they know, for they began where others left off, and others will continue from where they've left off. The knowledge, too, thus acquired at the cost of such labor, is frequently mingled with errors, mistakes, and doubts, whereas the knowledge of the angels is clear, certain, and free from all possibility of error. One of the greatest scholars that the world has ever seen, especially of the natural sciences, was St. Albert the Great. Wimmer says of him that he explained the whole universe from the stones on the ground to the stars in the heavens. He wrote with amazing lucidity and completeness on astronomy, meteorology, physics, mechanics, chemistry, mineralogy, anthropology, zoology, and botany. He has described minutely the life and manners of ants, bees, spiders, and other insects. His works also deal with vegetable life, plants, and trees. He has treated with great authority of earthquakes, volcanoes, the ebb and flow of tides, the secrets of the ocean, and various other subjects. In philosophy, He's accounted by some greater than St. Thomas, though he is inferior to him in theology. His grasp of the sacred sciences was on a par with his knowledge of the natural sciences. Now that 7 centuries have passed since he taught in the schools, the scholars of today are amazed at the vastness and accuracy of his work. Yet, the intellect of this prodigy of science bears no comparison with the intellect of the angels, and his amazing knowledge is little when compared to that of these blessed spirits. For the angels know all the secrets of nature. They see into the center of the earth, into the depths of the sea. They have all natural knowledge. They know more about health and medicine than all the doctors in the world, more about the stars and the heavens than all the astronomers who ever lived or will live. All sciences are known to them in their most absolute perfection, besides which God fills their intelligence with very oceans of supernatural light. The power of the angels. The second great faculty of the angels is the will, and this too is incomparably superior to the human will. When an angel wills, he never draws back. He wills with all his possible power, and there can be no change. His decisions are certain and irrevocable, for they're made with all necessary information about what he wills. In what he does there is no struggle, no conflict. He bears down opposition with irresistible might. In this, again, he is an image of God's strength. We have some examples of angelic power in the sacred scriptures. The Egyptians, as we read in Genesis, held God's chosen people in cruel bondage. God, to punish the oppressors and deliver his people, sent an angel who slew 70,000 Egyptians in one night. On another occasion, Sennacherib, the emperor of Assyria, sent up a mighty army against Jerusalem and demanded its surrender, mocking at the same time and insulting the God of Israel. The Almighty sent his angel, who slew 185,000 Assyrians in a single night. The angels could have as well slain millions of men as these few thousands. The angels guide the stars, the moon, the sun, and the planets. St. Thomas incidentally gives us another proof of the angelic strength. He teaches that each great star, planet, sun, every heavenly body, even the greatest, each has a guardian angel who keeps it in its course and prevents any possible aberration. What prodigious energy and power does not such control demand? It is true that all the stars and heavenly bodies, by the natural direction given them by God, pursue their several courses, but these great worlds are material, and therefore, as the angelic doctor points out, are liable to decay and deterioration. To prevent, therefore, disorder and confusion in the thousands of heavenly bodies which are whirling through space with inexpressible speed, God gives each one, in his all-wise providence, an angel to keep it in its course and avert the dire calamities that would result were it to stray from its allotted orbit. Few people think on all this when on beautiful starlit nights they gaze on the heavens and the myriads of stars. How fitting it would be to salute the countless angels who guard these stars. O glorious angels of the stars, we love you, we thank you. Please bless us and shower on us your graces. Cardinal Newman follows St. Thomas. The subject of angelic operations and the powers of nature has been beautifully illustrated by Cardinal Newman in one of his parochial sermons. What a number of beautiful and wonderful objects does nature present on every side to us, and how little do we know concerning them. In some, indeed, we see symptoms of intelligence, and we get to form some idea of what they are. For instance, about brute animals we know little, but still we see they have sense, and we understand that their bodily form, which meets the eye, is but the index, the outside token, of something we do not see. But why do rivers flow? Why does rain fall? Why does the sun warm us? And the wind, why does it blow? Here our natural reason is at fault. Reason tells us of no spirit abiding in what is commonly called the things of the world, to make them perform their ordinary duties. Of course, it is God's will which sustains all, so does God's will enable us to move also. Yet this does not hinder, but in one sense we may be truly said to move ourselves. But how do the wind and water and earth and fire move? Now here Scripture interposes and seems to tell us that all this wonderful harmony is the work of angels. Those events which we ascribe to chance, as the weather, or to nature, as the seasons, are duties done to that God who maketh his angels to be winds, and his ministers a flame of fire. For example, it was an angel which gave to the pool at Bethsaida its medicinal quality, and there is no reason why we should doubt that other health springs in this and other countries are made such by a like, though unseen, ministry. The fires on Mount Sinai, the thunders and lightnings were the work of angels, and in the Apocalypse we read of the angels restraining the winds. Works of vengeance are likewise attributed to them. The fiery law of the volcanoes, which, as it appears, was the cause of Sodom and Gomorrah's ruin, was brought about by the two angels who rescued Lot. The pestilence in Israel, when David numbered the people, was the work of an angel. The earthquake at the resurrection was the work of an angel. And in other parts of the Apocalypse we read how the earth was smitten in various ways by angels of vengeance. Thus, as far as the Scripture communications go, we learn that the course of nature, which is so wonderful, so beautiful, and at times so fearful, is affected by the ministry of these unseen beings. Nature is not inanimate. Its daily toil is intelligent. Its works are duties. As our souls move our bodies, be our bodies what they may, so there are spiritual intelligences which move those wonderful and vast portions of the natural world which seem to be inanimate. And as the gestures, speech, and expressive countenances of our friends around help us to hold intercourse with them, so in the motions of universal nature, in the interchange of day and night, summer and winter, wind and storm, fulfilling his word, we are reminded of the blessed and dutiful angels. Whenever we look abroad, we are reminded of those most gracious and holy beings, the servants of the holiest, who deign to minister to the heirs of salvation. Every breath of air and ray of light and heat, every beautiful prospect are, as it were, the skirts of their garments, the waving of the robes of those whose faces see God in heaven. It is indeed sad that so many people ignore these glorious angels. Let us, dear readers, for the future, recognize these gracious spirits, our elder brothers, our dearest friends. Let us speak to them, enjoy their company, ask them lovingly for all we need. No mother on earth gives as readily to her children what the angels are eager to give to us. How do the angels move? The movement of the angels is marvelous. In a single instant, an angel comes from heaven to earth, or goes from one end of the universe to the other without passing through the intermediate space. To understand this angelic movement, we have only to compare it with our thought. In a moment, our thought passes from heaven to earth, from England to China, from end to end of the earth. Angels are, if we might say so, living thoughts, and they move even as our thought. Light travels at the speed of 225,000 miles a second. Light comes from the sun to our earth at the same rate, and takes 8 minutes and 15 seconds to arrive. But the movement of the angels is unspeakably more rapid. They come in one instant. Another notable fact about these glorious spirits is that they can be in 2 or more places at the same time, even though these places be thousands of miles apart. They are in no way subject to the laws of space. Though ever with us and devoting all their care and attention to our welfare, they never lose sight of the presence of God. They're always gazing on his infinite beauty, basking in the sunshine of his presence. Are the angels more numerous than men? The number of the angels exceeds all our power of calculation or conception. If we think of the number of the stars in the heaven, of the number of leaves on the trees of all the forests in the world, of the innumerable grains of sand on all the seashores, of the drops of water in the ocean, of all the men who ever lived, all material things put together would not give us the smallest idea of the number of the angels. There are 3 great hierarchies of angels, and in each hierarchy there are 3 choirs, that is 9 choirs in all. They are thus divided. The seraphs, the cherubs, and the thrones form the hierarchy which stands nearest the throne of God. Then the dominations, virtues, powers form the second hierarchy. The principalities, archangels, and angels are the third order. The higher the choir, the more numerous are its angels, so that the seraphs in number far exceed all the others. Where do we get our knowledge of the angels? The first great font of information is the sacred scriptures, the inspired word of God. Both the Old and the New Testament tell us many and beautiful things about the great princes of heaven. Secondly, Christ's infallible church teaches the most consoling doctrine about the angels. Thirdly, tradition has handed down to us from the earliest days important truths regarding the angels. Fourthly, the unanimous teaching of the doctors and saints throws floods of light on this doctrine. Fifthly, our reason recognizes not only the possibility of the existence of angels, but the fitness, the necessity of their existence, for otherwise there would be a great gap, so to speak, in the harmonious arrangement in the plan of creation which is so divinely perfect. Pagan philosophers have recognized the existence of the angels, and missionaries from far-off pagan lands tell us that even the natives believe in the spirit world. Sixthly, we have innumerable, well-authenticated accounts of apparitions of angels, indisputable facts. Where are the angels? Where are the angels? This is a vastly important question and deserves our best attention. In chapter 4 of the book, All About Angels, by Father Paul O'Sullivan. The angels are everywhere. Millions of them ever stand before God. Millions of them, too, ministered to us on earth as we've already seen. They have charge not only of us, but of all material things, of the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, oceans, rivers, kingdoms, provinces. But what interests us most is that each man, each woman, each child, pagan or Christian, baptized or unbaptized, has an angel all to himself or herself. When we gather in a church, there are as many angels truly present as there are men and women. When walking in the busy streets every day, we pass hundreds and thousands of glorious angels. When we enter a hall, a tram car, a train, we are in the midst of angels. All the men and women whom we meet, whether young or old, rich or poor, saints or sinners, each one has his or her angel. And since all these gracious spirits are living, vital intelligences, and see and love us, we should do well to salute them. They will recognize our salutation and return it. They will appreciate our attention and repay us lovingly. Every enlightened Christian should make it his habit to treat these angels reverently, yet familiarly and lovingly. We do not salute the men or women we meet in the street or in the church or in trains. They would not perceive or recognize our salutation. Not so the angels. They see us distinctly. They note our every gesture. They hear our message with the greatest joy and return it most generously. They will give us love for love, with the difference that they give us 1,000 times more than we give them. If some rare chance brings us into the presence of a king or queen, we salute the royal personages and feel flattered if our salute is returned with a gracious smile or with a few words, and still more if the royal person stops to speak with us. We meet the angels not by chance, not seldom, but every day. They see us, they love us, and repay every attention we show them with a substantial return. Yet so many make no account of them. What lamentable ignorance! If we but say, "Dearest angels here present, I honor and love you and give thanks to God for all the glory he has given you. Every one of these hundreds of angels will hear and receive with pleasure our greeting, and will repay us with a special mark of friendship. For the angels never do things by halves. They're not like us, poor mortals. They never forget, and they never grow cold. When once they're our friends, they are our friends forever. Fancy all the millions of dear, loving, watchful angels in Africa, in China, in India, in Japan, in Protestant countries too, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, Scotland, England, North America, with their thousands and thousands of men and women who never think of their angels, never say a prayer to them, never say one word of thanks for their tireless love, for the unceasing favors that these loving angels are doing them. But what can we do? We can offer our masses, our communions, our rosaries from time to time to thank, to console these glorious angels. They will return our love 1,000-fold. How easy it is for us to make powerful friends. Do the angels desire our love? One may ask, do these great angels really prize our poor love and friendship? Most certainly. The great God himself, the great Creator, the Lord of all the angels, asks us for our love and gives us his infinite love in exchange. Nay, he promises us a special reward, an eternal reward, for every little mark of friendship we show him. One little act of love gives him more pleasure than 1,000 blasphemies give him pain, as he has revealed to some of his chosen servants. Mary, most holy, the loved Queen of the angels, longs too for our affection, and most generously repays it. It is not then surprising that the holy angels, even the mighty seraphs and cherubs who stand around the throne of God, and all the heavenly choirs, are exceedingly pleased when we show them some sign of love. St. Gertrude tells us that one day she was inspired to offer her Holy Communion in honor of the 9 choirs of angels. God permitted her to see how radiantly happy and grateful they were for this act of love. She never dreamed that she could give them such happiness. We know that the sacrifice of the Mass gives God infinite glory. It gives him all the possible praise and love that he could desire. One Mass gives him more honor than all creatures have ever given him on earth or in heaven. If then we offer our Mass sometimes, at least once a week, in honor of the angels, we give these blessed spirits the greatest possible joy. We can also give them immense pleasure by offering our good works in their honor, and thanking God for all the beauty and holiness and glory that he has given them. If we do so, they will repay us 1,000 times over. The angels in the churches. Above all, in the churches there are multitudes of angels, loving, adoring God in raptures of delight. He's the same God whom they worship in heaven. We should think of this when in church. It would be a source of great consolation to us. We should join our prayers with their prayers, for thus will God listen to our supplications with far greater mercy and love. Our prayers, frequently so cold when joined with those of the angels, become most efficacious. The angels and the Mass. Multitude of angels assist at every Mass. St. Gregory says the heavens open, and the multitudes of angels come to assist at the holy sacrifice. St. Augustine, the angels surround and help the priest when he's celebrating Mass. St. John Chrysostom, when Mass is being celebrated, the sanctuary is filled with countless angels who adore the divine victim immolated on the altar. The efficacy of the Mass is so wonderful. God's mercy and generosity are then so unlimited that there's no moment so propitious to ask for favors as when Jesus is born on the altar. What we then ask for we shall almost certainly receive, and what we do not obtain in the Mass we may scarcely hope to receive by all other prayers, penances, or pilgrimages. The angels know this full well, and come in multitudes to adore God and make their petitions at this hour of mercy. What an example for us! We read in the Revelations of St. Bridget, "One day, when I was assisting at the holy sacrifice, I saw an immense number of holy angels descend and gather around the altar, contemplating the priest. They sang heavenly canticles that ravished my heart. Heaven itself seemed to be contemplating the great sacrifice. And yet, we poor, blind, and miserable creatures assist at the Mass with so little love, relish, and respect. Oh, if God would open our eyes, what wonders should we not see? When Blessed Henry Suso, the holy Dominican, was saying Mass, angels in visible form gathered around the altar, and some came near to him in raptures of love. This is what takes place at every Mass, though we do not see it. Do Catholics ever think of this amazing truth, that at Mass they are praying in the midst of thousands of God's angels? The Angel and the Roses. A poor farmer was wont to attend daily Mass for many years of his life. He was crossing the snow-covered fields one cold morning on his way to church, when he thought he heard footsteps behind him, and turning, he saw his angel guardian bearing a basket full of beautiful roses, which exhaled a delicious perfume. "See," said the angel, "these roses represent each step you've taken on the way to Mass, and each rose also represents a glorious reward which awaits you in heaven. But far, far greater are the merits you've got from the Mass itself." How to honor the angels at Mass. At the beginning of Mass, let us remember what the saints tell us, that multitudes of angels assist at the holy sacrifice. We are in the midst of these angels who see us and note all our movements. They're eager to help us and offer our prayers to God if we're devout. But if we are negligent and distracted, they are offended. What a joy it is for us to feel that we are in the blessed company of these great angels. At the Gloria in Excelsis, let us join our voices with those of the priest and the angels. This is the glorious canticle that they sang on the first Christmas night when Jesus was born. At Mass, Jesus is born again, and again the blessed spirits join with the priest in singing this same canticle. It is a wonderful prayer of adoration and praise and love. We must attend to its every word. At the preface, we join our voices with the seraphs and cherubs and all the 9 choirs of angels who are singing with ineffable delight, Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus. Our Lord bade St. Gertrude to give most special attention to the preface and join with the angels in praising Him. At the elevation, the angels fall down and adore God even as they adore Him in heaven. He's the same God, omnipotent, infinite, eternal. How cold we are! We can change this coldness and indifference into burning fervor if we join our adoration with that of the angels. St. Teresa appeared to one of her religious after death and said to her, "You should adore God on the altar just as we adore Him in heaven, for He's the same God." At the communion, when the priest holds the sacred host in his hands and gives it to the people, the angels surround him, gazing in rapt ecstasies on that miracle of miracles, God entering with such love into the souls of His creatures. They gaze on God with unspeakable happiness, but God never enters into them, never unites Himself to them as He does to us in communion. Could we see these adoring angels as they stand around the priest, our communions would not be so tepid and so cold. Let us at least ask the angels to help us to receive our God with burning love and fervor. A venerable priest once told the author how deeply sorry he was that for many years he had thought little about the angels, but since he began to know and love them better, he finds a new joy and devotion in saying Mass. Chapter 5. When and where were the angels created? The angels were created at the same time the world was created, but before man. They were created in the state of grace and in the empyrean heaven, not in the heaven of the Blessed Trinity, not in the presence of God. Had they once seen God, they would never have ceased to see and love Him. They were created, therefore, in another heaven, and here they had to give a proof of their fidelity to God, and so merit the beatific vision. They, like us, have free wills, and like us had to choose between good and evil. True in the angelic nature itself, as St. Thomas teaches, there is no strife, as there is in our poor natures, between the spirit and the flesh, But before they were admitted to the beatific vision, they had to choose between their nature, already in the state of grace, and the still higher state of that grace, which would admit them to the immediate presence of God forever. No creature, however perfect, not even the princes of the angels, could see God without that most special grace which theologians call the light of glory. Before being admitted to see God, they were tried. In this trial, by far the greater number remained faithful to God, and were immediately received into the heaven of the Blessed Trinity, and allowed to gaze on the unveiled beauty of God. Once here, they could sin no more. Some of these, the faithful angels, always stand before God and are called the assisting angels. These are the seraphs, cherubs, and thrones. St. Thomas thinks that these never come on earth. Others, while always enjoying God's presence, minister to us and are called the ministering angels. These are the dominations, virtues, and powers, who guard the greater things of the universe, and the principalities, archangels, and angels, who give their care more especially to us. Unfortunately, many of the angels fell at the moment of trial. Some think as many as a third of the heavenly host. They fell through the sin of pride, preferring their own will to that of God in the time of trial. At the moment of their fall, they were precipitated into hell. Their great natures, their intellects and wills, retained their pristine strength and power, but their love and sanctity were transformed by their sin into implacable malice and hate. Seeing that they cannot attack God, they direct their fierce vengeance and vent their spleen on us, who are destined to fill the thrones they've left vacant, and enjoy the glory and happiness that they have forever forfeited. These angels fell, not all from one choir or other, but many fell from each choir. Some even of the highest and the holiest angels were lost. These are the demons, of whom we shall speak later on. Who will fill the thrones of the fallen angels? The thrones left vacant by the fall of these angels will be given to those of us who remain faithful to God and merit heaven. The question arises, who will fill the thrones of the seraphs and cherubs and other high angels who fell? Can men pretend to such high places in heaven? Yes, men also, men prepared by God with great graces and raised to the highest degree of sanctity, will take the thrones even of the great seraphs and cherubs who have fallen. Though it is true that our natures are immeasurably lower than those of the mighty princes of heaven, yet God raises up by his grace, which is a participation of his own divine nature, as St. Peter tells us, to be fully worthy of ranking even with the glorious seraphs who stand around his throne. Holy Mary, God's dear mother, Queen of angels and saints, is an example of this. She is holier and greater than all the angels. She's on a plane all by herself, inferior to God, but incomparably superior to all other creatures. Even at the first moment of her existence, she was greater and holier than the highest angels. Saint Joseph, the foster father of Jesus, and the most pure spouse of Mary, comes next. Next, we may believe, rank the apostles, patriarchs, and prophets. Many, too, of the other great saints, like St. Dominic, St. Francis, St. Ignatius, will doubtless fill glorious thrones near God. We read in the story of the Blessed Jordan, who succeeded St. Dominic as Master General of the Dominican Order, that after his death God was pleased to manifest his sanctity in diverse ways. He himself appeared to St. Ludwine and others, telling them of his special glory in heaven, and saying that he ranked with the prophets and the apostles. St. Paul, too, the first hermit who had dwelt in the desert from the age of 16 until the age of 115, was also seen after death by St. Anthony, being carried to heaven by the angels, and given a place among the prophets and apostles. A pious author relates the legend of how once a holy man was shown in vision the glory of heaven. He noted one high throne that was vacant, and asked the angel who accompanied him, "Whose throne is that?" The angel made answer, "That was the throne destined for Lucifer. But now, Francis of Assisi will fill it. The mighty Lucifer fell through pride. The lowly Francis has been raised up by humility. Chapter 6. Our Angel Guardians. We will now speak of what is for us the most interesting and important of all the facts concerning the angels, namely, their role as our dearest, most intimate, most loving guardians. Every Christian should strive to have a full comprehension of this doctrine, and should realize vividly the presence of this angel by his side. When does our angel begin to take charge of us? The great St. Thomas tells us that the moment a child is born, God calls one of his glorious Spirit and gives the newborn babe into his special care. It is not when the soul is created and united to our bodies, which takes place before our birth, for then the child is still one with its mother and protected by the mother's angel. But it is when we are born into the world that our angel begins his care of us even before baptism. Every man, whether pagan, heretic, or Catholic, has a guardian angel. Though one angel would be powerful enough to take perfect care of 1,000 souls, yet God, in his infinite goodness, has given to each one of us a special angel, an angel who is all our own, whose great duty henceforth will be to watch over us day and night, asleep or awake, alone or in the midst of company, in our homes, in the street, working or resting, everywhere, every moment of our lives, in joys and in troubles. He never abandons us for a single instant. He sees our every movement. He's ever at our sides. Each one has a special angel. It seems at first sight incredible that God gives each one of us poor mortals a glorious Prince of Heaven to guide and guard us all the days of our life, who's with us night and day, who devotes all his time, all his care, all his unceasing vigilance to secure our happiness. But in pure truth, it's only one of the many immense proofs of love which our dear Lord has given us. What personal favors has not God himself already done us? Did he not create us with his own hands, making us to his own image and likeness? Did he not raise us up to the highest possible destiny that he could give us, namely to be with him as his dear children forever in heaven, seated on thrones in his presence, enjoying infinite joys, the most perfect happiness for all eternity? Is he not our Father? Did he not suffer and die for each one of us? Does he not come into our souls, uniting himself to us most intimately, countless times in Holy Communion? Does he not watch over us every moment, so that not a single hair falls from our heads without his permission? True indeed, it is a wonderful proof of his love to give us a special angel all to ourselves, to be our friend and protector. But it is only in keeping with what he's already done for us, and it is to prepare us for what he still wishes to do for us. But what is really amazing is that we do not appreciate, do not understand as we ought this divine favor, that we do not prize and love and seek to know better this glorious angel who is so good to us. Our neglect of our dear angel is appalling. What does our angel do for us? We've already explained the great holiness, power, and love of the angels, how mighty their intellects are, how powerful their wills, and how irresistible their strength. Now when an angel takes charge of a soul, he devotes all his glorious intelligence and knowledge, all his power and vigilance, to protect, defend, and help in every possible way the person whom God has given into his charge. He does this firstly because God gives him the command to do so, and the angels most earnestly desire to do what God wishes. Secondly, because he has himself an immense, personal, affectionate love for us. He longs to share with us his joy, his happiness, his love, his holiness, and this with such a generosity and earnestness of desire as we selfish mortals cannot possibly understand. He labors every moment, day and night, to make us better, holier, and happier. Not satisfied with his own efforts on our behalf, he prays for us unceasingly and with incredible fervor to God. What would we not give to have certainty of the prayers of a great saint like St. Dominic, St. Francis, or St. Ignatius? But we have those of an angel, burning with the love of God and full of intense love for us, interceding constantly for us before the throne of the Most High. God can refuse him nothing that he asks for his client, since it was God who gave him charge over us and ordered him to take every care of us. This great angel, too, is constantly whispering into our ears counsels full of love and wisdom. Our angel may not interfere with our free will, but he can and does act on our memories, recalling vividly something we ought to do or warning us of something we ought not to do. He acts benevolently on our imaginations and on our reason, persuading us, urging us to correct our weaknesses, to fight against our evil inclinations, inspiring us with new ideals, and stimulating us to a fresh and greater effort. If we do wrong, he's angry. He's ever on the alert to defend us from the fierce attacks of the demons, who are our relentless foes, and who use all their malice to ruin us, to tempt us, to make us sin, and who stir up every sort of trouble against us. Our angels, moreover, save us from many other dangers and evils of which we're utterly unconscious. Only in heaven shall we come to know the favors and benefits that our angel confers on us every day, the sorrows from which he saves us, the perils from which he snatches us. It could not be otherwise, since he's devoting to us all his angelic vigilance, all his bright intelligence. His efforts on our behalf are unceasing. On marriage, the angels most especially give us help in the important events of our lives. The great bulk of men and women are called to the married state. There's nothing more vitally important for them than a happy marriage, nothing that ruins and wrecks their lives like an unhappy marriage. Now the dear angels are more eager than their clients should obtain this great grace than father or mother or even than themselves. What happy marriages would there not be if only young men and women earnestly besought their angels to obtain this blessing for them? Those, therefore, who desire a happy marriage should earnestly pray to their angel for this grace. No one better than he can secure this blessing for them. We read how St. Raphael obtained for Tobias a beautiful, virtuous, and wealthy spouse. Our angel can do the same for us. Another all-important fact in our lives is suffering. All must suffer, but suffering is easy to bear if only we know how to suffer, and if we have a clever nurse and an able doctor to help us when we're sick, and we have a kind friend who can help and console us in other troubles. Again, our angels are all-powerful to help us in sickness and suffering. We shall see later on how the angels help the martyrs to bear even with joy in their cruel torments. Much more can our angels help us to bear our little sufferings. How many sufferers in their own homes, and still more in hospitals, are condemned to spend days and weeks on beds of pain, and pass long interminable nights of wakefulness and agony. What help and consolation they could have if only they knew and loved their dear angels and called on them constantly for help, as we saw in the case of St. Gemma Galgani. It is indeed criminal to neglect to teach boys and girls all about the angels, for thus they are deprived during all their lives of the greatest blessings. Examinations have much to say in the future happiness and welfare of boys and girls. No professor, howsoever clever he may be, can impart knowledge like our angels if only we ask them. Students who are devout to their angels will study with far greater ease and will make far more brilliant examinations than others. Their angels will give them a love and passion for study, which is the best guarantee for acquiring knowledge. We have frequently to embark on important business arrangements, which may bring us much gain or much loss. There are doubts and difficulties which we cannot resolve. Once more, our best counselor is our great angel. Let us appeal to him for help and advice. Chapter 7. Is it by mere chance, or is it our angel? We often hear the words, "I had a miraculous escape. I escaped by a hair's breadth." But in plain truth, How did we escape? It was most probably our angel who snatched us from the danger that threatened us. Again, we hear of someone who's dying, of whose life there is no hope, and who suddenly takes a change for the better and gets well. The watchers by the bedside cannot understand how it happened. Neither can the doctors see the reason for the change. Was it mere chance? Certainly not. It was his dear angel who is all-powerful, all-loving, who intervened and saved him from a premature end. An angel knows more about medicine and sickness than all the doctors in the world. It is true that we cannot affirm categorically that this or that was done by the angel if we have no proof of it, but we can say much more, that our angel saves us from thousands of dangers and evils, and that he confers untold benefits and favors on us, and that at every moment of our lives. It is for that and for that alone that he's standing by our sides, that he's watching over us with all his vigilant care. Many times we ourselves prevent him using his loving power on our behalf, because we refuse to listen to his inspirations and counsels, clinging obstinately to our evil ways, to our silly imaginings. Some instances. For a person of delicate health, rich enough to retain an eminent physician constantly in attendance on him, with instructions to use all his talent, to bestow all his time, and to spare no expense in order to secure the improvement of his client's health, the patient would certainly attribute any betterment in his state to the unceasing care and efforts of his doctor. Yet the most eminent doctors have not the knowledge, the experience, the skill, the ability, the unrelaxing care, the eager wish to help us that our angel has. Why then hesitate to attribute the many extraordinarily good things that happen to us to this ever-watchful angel? Or take the case that's occurring daily in every household of the world. Children, young and full of life, giddy of course, and possessing little sense or prudence, are given into the watchful care of a nurse, whose only task is to take care of the little ones and see that no harm comes to them. She's nothing else to do. No one doubts that this vigilant attendant saves her charges from 1,000 dangers. They may walk in streets busy with traffic, where cars, automobiles, conveyances of all kinds constantly pass, or they may walk by the side of a lake, or a fast-flowing river, or on a road which borders on precipices. But they are safe. Why? Their nurse is vigilant. She keeps them from all dangers. Yet the watchfulness of a nurse is only a faint image of the unceasing care and vigilance of a mighty angel. Interesting facts. A lady friend of the writer's was once traveling with her little boy of 3 years of age in an express train. The child was standing near the door of the carriage, which suddenly flew open. It had not been well closed. The boy was flung out. The mother, frantic with terror and filled with the gravest fears for the life of the little one, pulled the safety cord, but the train, which was traveling at high speed, did not pull up for a considerable time. When the rescue party reached the spot where the child had fallen, instead of finding a broken and bruised little body as they expected, they found the cause of their anxiety unscathed, radiant with happiness, playing as if he were in his nursery at home. The thought of all was, it was surely God's angel who saved that child. On another occasion, a young friend wishing to scale a high wall, placed a ladder against it and proceeded to mount. At some yards from the wall there was a deep well, about 6 feet in diameter, which had its sides paved from the top to the surface of the water with great stones. Suddenly the climber found himself at the bottom of the well, standing up, unscathed. How did this happen? The ladder must have slipped in some strange way. In the natural course of events, he would have dashed his head against the side of the well, or fallen head foremost into the water. But except for the wetting, he escaped without the smallest scratch or bruise. He could only think that it was his dear angel who saved him from a horrible death, so that every day he thanks his angel with all his heart for this favor. A lady and her daughter were walking together on a road on the side of which was a high wall. Suddenly the young girl stopped. Her mother repeatedly called her to come on, but she didn't move. A moment afterwards, the high wall crumbled and fell with an awful crash, and would have certainly killed both mother and daughter had they gone only a few steps further. The mother, astonished at what had taken place, asked her daughter why she had stopped so suddenly, and as it proved, so opportunely. "Oh, mother," exclaimed the girl in surprise, "did you not see that young man who signaled to me not to go on?" Was it her angel? The writer once asked a venerable bishop with whom he was traveling in a motor car through a crowded city if he was afraid of accidents, as a little time before some serious collisions had taken place. "Oh, no," he replied. "When I get into a motor car, I at once place myself under the care of my angel guardian, and I feel quite safe." A young lady who lived in a lone countryside once assured the writer that she was never afraid, neither in daytime nor in the darkest night, because she felt absolutely sure that she had her angel with her, an angel who loved her, an angel all-powerful, ready to help her. When anything happened amiss, and she escaped unhurt, she instinctively thanked her angel, for she knew full well that it was he who had kept her from harm. Another told him that she had in her early life been very nervous and fearful, but on learning about the angel guardians, she was filled with boundless confidence in her angel, so that she now enjoys perfect peace and is no longer tormented with those horrible fears. The conduct of these two ladies should be the attitude of every good Christian. Michael's guardian angel. The following interesting fact bears, as our readers will see for themselves, the impress of truth. It happened some 30 years ago, but the account has been reprinted several times with the personal guarantee of those who were actually present at the time of the occurrence. In a small town in Pennsylvania, the parish priest, with the help of some nuns, was preparing the boys and girls of the parish for confirmation. On the eve of the ceremony, the children were taken to the church to make their confessions. One of the sisters in attendance got annoyed at what she considered the unusual giddiness of the children. She noticed them whispering to each other and looking all in one direction, apparently at one of their companions, a little boy of 10 or 12, and she bade them to be recollected. On returning to the school after the confessions were over, she again reminded them that in church they must refrain from talking and whispering to each other. To her amazement, the children told her that they had seen an angel, and were quite surprised that she had not seen him too. The tone of innocence and sincerity, and at the same time the unanimity with which all positively asserted that they had seen the angel, impressed the good nun. In fact, there seemed to be no possible doubt of what they affirmed. However, to make things still more certain and clear, she called them aside separately and diligently questioned each one as to what he or she had seen, when exactly they first saw the angel, where, and what he was like. Once more the children described, each separately, exactly what they'd seen, and with perfect agreement as to details. It was as follows. One of their number, Michael, who was an excellent lad, had gone in his turn to confession. On leaving the confessional, the children, one and all, saw a beautiful angel, spotlessly white and radiantly beautiful, accompanying Michael, first to the altar where he knelt, and then to his place in the benches. The angel had its wings outstretched, and had an expression of tender love as it looked at Michael. At once the children, taken by surprise, whispered, "Look, look, oh, how lovely!" The nun, more than ever convinced of the truth of what the children told her, hastened to lay the facts before the priests. These discussed the matter among themselves, and then, without awakening the suspicions of the children, proceeded also to question them. They, in their turn, were deeply impressed, and saw no reason for doubting what the children stated so firmly. His lordship the bishop arrived in the course of the evening, and the priest gave him a full account of this consoling incident. He also wished to have first-hand evidence, and once more the children unwaveringly narrated to his lordship all the facts as before. Inquiring into Michael's behavior, he learned that he was indeed a very good and innocent boy. He was cheerful and gay, a good companion, a diligent student, and although he lived very far from the church, he attended the instructions regularly and learned his lessons with unfailing care and diligence. The bishop, the priest, and the nuns were convinced that Michael's guardian angel had indeed manifested his presence. Chapter 8. In the book all about angels, the angels in the sacred scriptures, the angels in the Old Testament. We find the most complete references to the angels and proofs of their touching love for us in that best and purest of all sources, the sacred scriptures. We shall therefore select a few of these beautiful stories, and we invite our readers to ponder on them and learn the lessons they teach. They may have read them before, but they can never drink too deeply and too often of these living waters, which are the Word of God. An angel comforts Hagar. We read of how a glorious angel appeared to Hagar when she was plunged in grief and despair in the desert, seeing her son about to die a cruel death from hunger and thirst. The angel, full of love, consoled and comforted the sorrowing mother. He not only gave her abundance of water for herself and her son, but he filled her with great joy by assuring her that her son would become the father of a mighty race. Every mother has a dear angel guardian by her side, and each of her children has one also. When children are sick, or when they cause their parents sorrow and anxiety, these mothers should remember to appeal to their holy angels for help and consolation. One of the gravest duties of every Christian mother is to instill into the minds of her children respect and love for their angels, to give them a full and clear comprehension of the presence of their angel guardians. An angel comes to the help of Elias. In like manner, one of these loving spirits came to the aid of the prophet Elias when he was flying from Queen Jezebel, who sought to take his life. The prophet was worn out with sorrow and fatigue, and in the depths of his grief he lay down under the shade of a tree and besought God to allow him to die. Exhausted, he fell fast asleep. God's dear angel presently came and roused him from his slumber, and gave him delicious bread to eat and heaven-sent water to slake his burning thirst. The prophet, refreshed and invigorated by the food the angel had given him, once more fell into a peaceful sleep. When he had rested sufficiently, the angel once more awoke him, and bade him eat and drink again of what the Lord had sent him, for he added, "A long journey still lies before you." Renewed in body and soul by the angel's ministrations, the prophet now walked for 40 days and 40 nights in the strength of this angelic food, finally reaching the goal he had set before him, namely the Mount of Horeb. Let us learn from this angelic intervention a lesson which will serve us in our every need, namely that our dear angel guardian, who is ever at our side, loves us with an unbounded love, and though he may not show himself visibly to us as he did to the prophet, still he is none the less really with us, and none the less eager and ready to help us if we only call on him. We must clearly recognize the fact that we have an angel ever with us night and day, able and willing to comfort us in all our needs. Judith, with the help of an angel, saves her people. Judith of Bethulia furnishes us with another interesting story of angelic help. Judith was a very beautiful and pious widow. Her native city of Bethulia was besieged by Holofernes at the head of the Assyrian army. The natives of the city were reduced to extremities by fast increasing want of food and drink, for the enemy had completely cut off the water on which the city depended for its supplies. The unhappy rulers were already negotiating the surrender of the city into the hands of the enemy, when this heroic woman, full of righteous indignation, rebuked them for their want of trust in God, and determined to save the people herself. With a holy daring she sought and obtained permission to leave the city, and with the gravest risk to her life and honor, determined to penetrate into the camp of the enemy, even into the very tent of Holofernes. Dressing herself in costly garments, the better to gain favor with Holofernes, and taking with her a single maid, she fearlessly left the safety of the city and made her way at nightfall into the hostile camp. She was speedily seized by the enemy soldiers, but, with an unexampled bravery, calmly demanded of her captors to lead her to the presence of their chief, which they readily did, believing that she had a secret of great weight to impart to them. She succeeded, as she had hoped, in winning favor with Holofernes, and biding her time until he, drunk with wine, lay on his bed in deep sleep. She then drew his sword from its scabbard, and with 2 mighty blows severed his head from his body. Placing her bloody trophy in a bag under cover of night, she returned to the gates of Bethulia, and from afar cried to the watchmen on the walls to open the gates. For she said, God is with us, who has shown his power in Israel. For great was the surprise and the joy of the rulers and priests, when taking the still bleeding head of her victim from her bag, she held it up to their astonished gaze. Their lives, their city, and the people were saved. Hang, she said, the head of Holofernes on the walls, and as soon as the sun shall rise, let every man take his arms and rush out to the assault. And when you see that the enemy is fleeing, go after them without fear, for the Lord will destroy them under your feet. The rulers followed this sage advice. Taken by surprise at this unexpected attack by the Jews, the Assyrians sought to rouse their sleeping general, but alas, to their consternation and dismay they only found his headless body, and seized with panic, they broke into wild flight. The rout was complete. The pursuing Jews made a great slaughter, and possessed themselves of a mighty booty. 30 days were scarcely sufficient to gather the immense spoils. Mindful of the brave woman, who at such eminent peril to herself had saved the city from destruction, and their wives and children from the vilest of slaveries, the people sang her praises in immortal canticles, which have glorified her name for all time. Joachim the high priest came from Jerusalem to Bethulia, with all his ancients, to see Judith. And when they had come, they blessed her as with one voice, Thou art the glory of Jerusalem, thou art the joy of Israel, thou art the honor of our peoples. Now, we may ask, who helped this weak woman to carry out a plan so daring that even the bravest soldier would have hesitated and feared to undertake? She herself tells us that it was her holy angel. God's angel has been my keeper, both going hence and abiding there, and returning thence hither. And the Lord hath not suffered his handmaid to be defiled, but rather brought me back to you without pollution of sin, rejoicing for his victory, my escape, and your deliverance. Once more, learn from Judith to place unbounded trust in our angel guardian. Heliodorus, punished by the angels. In the history of Heliodorus, we have a striking proof of how God comes to the aid of those who trust him, and how he punishes his enemies. The king of Syria, being in urgent need of money, and hearing that there was much treasure in the temple of Jerusalem, sent one of his trusty officers named Heliodorus to seize these treasures. On his arrival in the holy city, the king's messenger announced the object of his coming. The high priest warned him that he dare not touch this money or profane the temple. The royal envoy made no account of the prayers of the priest and the protests of the people, but proceeded to carry out the orders of his master. The priests prostrated themselves before the altar, clad in their sacerdotal vestments, and so great was the grief and anguish depicted on the face of the high priest that all were moved to pity and compassion. Many, too, came from their houses, praying and making public supplication to God for help in their great need. Women and young maidens raised their hands to heaven and implored God's all-powerful protection. Heliodorus, intent on carrying out the orders of the king, boldly entered the treasury with his retinue, when lo, a horse with a terrible rider on it, clad in golden armor, ran at him fiercely and struck him with its forefeet, while 2 young men, beautiful and strong, bright and glorious, in comely apparel, stood at either side of him and scourged him severely with rods until he fell fainting to the ground. His attendants lifted him up speechless and half dead. They placed him on a litter and carried him out without any hope of recovery. Filled with a holy fear and dread, they then besought the high priest to make intercession to the Most High, that his life might be spared, and that he might return in safety to their king. This the high priest consented to do, and while he was praying, the same angel again appeared and said to Heliodorus, "Give thanks to Onias, the high priest, because for his sake the Lord has granted thee life." Heliodorus, repentant and full of gratitude, offered sacrifice to God, and made vows to him who had granted him his life. He also gave thanks to Onias. Then, taking his troops, he returned to the king, and testified to all men the works of the great God which he had seen with his own eyes. When the king, still desiring to seize the treasures of the temple, asked him who might be a fit person to send again for that purpose, he answered fearlessly, "If thou, O king, hast an enemy or traitor to thy kingdom, send him, and thou shalt receive him again scourged, if indeed he escape at all, for there is in that place certain power of God." It is thus that God sent his angels to protect his friends and punish his enemies. Now that there's so much unrest and trouble in the world, all Christians should pray to the holy angels for help. If we do so, they will save us, as they saved the temple of Jerusalem. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are cast into a fiery furnace, and are saved by an angel. Nebuchadnezzar, the all-powerful king of Babylon, built a golden statue 60 cubits high, and demanded all his subjects to adore it under pain of being cast into a fiery furnace. 3 Hebrew youths refused to obey, and bravely told the king that their God could deliver them from his hands. The king, in a great fury, ordered the furnace to be prepared, and heated 7 times more than was usual, and commanded that the youth should be bound and cast into the flames. The king's servants continued to heat the furnace with brimstone, pitch, and dry sticks, but the fire did not even touch the holy youths, for an angel came and stood by them, so that they walked in the midst of the dreadful fire, praising and blessing God, whereas those who cast them in were caught by the flames and burned alive. The king was astonished, and exclaimed, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? And I see 4 loose, and walking in the midst of the flames, and there's no hurt in them. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." This was the angel God sent to help the holy youths. He ordered the young men to come forth, and when they did so, he and his nobles saw that not even a hair of their heads had been touched by the fire. Then the king broke forth in praise of the true God, and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel, and delivered his servants who had trusted in him. There is no other God who can save in this manner." Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel, hated by his enemies who were jealous of him, was accused by them to King Darius for disobeying the orders he had given to adore a false god. The king, though he loved Daniel, was constrained by these wicked men to cast him into the lion's den, for such was the law of the Medes. No time was lost. Daniel was seized and thrown to the hungry lions. Darius, full of bitter grief, could neither eat nor sleep that night. Rising early in the morning, he hastened to the den of the lions, and calling out, asked Daniel if God had saved him. Daniel answered, "My God hath sent his angel, and hath shut up the mouths of the lions, and they have not hurt me." The king then ordered him to be released, and his enemies to be thrown to the lions. These had not well reached the bottom of the den before the lions caught and devoured them. Then the king Darius wrote to all his people and said, "It is decreed by me that in all my empire and kingdom all men dread and fear the God of Daniel, for he is the living and eternal God." Once more, we see how God never fails his servants, but sends his holy angels to take charge of them if they call on him.